Good morning. Welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is darkest before the dawn. Any of us in transformation have noticed that when we're working on things sometimes, or pretty reliably, maybe even, things get worse before they get better. And we're going to talk about that dynamic and how we can use it to recognize breakdown as a prelude to breakthrough. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, any stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your electrons and your molecules, lighting you up from the inside out. And as you exhale any remaining stress, tension, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub our fingers against our palms. And feel that wonderful sensation, the tickling and tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us on this Monday morning. At least in the US, it's morning time. Anyway, today we're talking about how it is darkest before the dawn. In other words, how when we're working through something, when we're processing something, when we're moving toward transformation, what happens so often is that whatever the issue is that we're addressing becomes much more exaggerated, much more prominent and prevalent. And it's such an interesting dynamic, because when that happens, we have a choice. We have a choice to continue on or to give up. And it's ironic, because it's almost like it's a test of, well, how much do you really, really want this transformation? How committed are you to it? Good afternoon, Pat. Welcome. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about darkest before the dawn. In other words, in the process of healing and transformation, how we're often really confronted by breakdown before we get to the other side. And the only way beyond is through. We can't go around it. We can't avoid it. And so when these issues arise, and they're right there in our face, like right in our face, in a very big and maybe obstructing our entire view of anything else, that in those moments we often are inclined to give up. And it is as though it's a test, like a test of our mettle, a test of our determination, a test of our commitment to get to the other side of whatever this issue might be. And the bigger the issue, the bigger the breakdown, oftentimes. And so what I notice in my coaching process with folks is that often, as we're working on something, people experience sometimes extreme breakdown. And it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense from so many different vantage points. But when you're restructuring something, when you're trying to recreate something, the old pattern the old structure needs to come down. It needs to get dissolved in one way, shape, or form, right? It needs to get raised, leveled to the ground sometimes in order to be able to build back up. And it's a scary process to be confronted by kind of things falling apart or falling down around you. You know, when you're working so hard towards something and that very thing is, you know, like the faults in the structure really make themselves very apparent, often in painful and very challenging ways. And we have a choice at those moments. It is a choice point. We have a choice to recognize that breakdown as a prelude to breakthrough, which is pretty much the way I choose to view these breakdowns. You know, once you can call it out as a breakdown, that shifts things, because you're removing yourself from the experience of it to a great enough degree to be able to have a broader view. And with that broader view, you can recognize that dynamic in the context of your growth rather than getting immersed in the drama of it. So when you can identify it as a breakdown, you have the ability then to stand back and see it in the bigger context. And when you see it from a bigger context, then you can perhaps recognize that this is the unfurling, the unfolding, the unraveling of an old pattern that is now it's dissolving. And in the process of its dissolution, there is destruction. You know, destruction precedes creation. Breakdown precedes breakthrough. So, you know, in a certain respect, there's a destruction of the old paradigm, the old pattern, the old behavior on the way to the new, and it gets messy. It gets really messy, and it is because it's so messy and because it can be so frightening to be experiencing this upheaval. It's often a place where people quit, which is really unfortunate. And there's the dilemma of, when is enough enough? When is it time to quit? And when is it time to recognize this is a breakdown in the context of transformation? And it actually, rather than failure, it's actually an indicator that something is being effective. I think it's an interesting conversation to look at. How do we identify when something is, when the signal that we're getting is a signal to say, okay, that's enough, this is done, this is over, and it's time to stop, versus this is an indicator that I'm actually moving in the direction that I've been working to move in. So I'm wondering if you have an experience of this breakdown, breakthrough sort of process, because I see it over and over and over again. So on a lesser note, for myself, I've been looking at or working at hello, Louise. Welcome. So good to have you back with us. Louise says it all resonates. Thank you. I'm so glad that it does. I mean, I think that this is not an uncommon experience. And the thing, like, so I've been working on shedding shedding identities and shedding old behaviors and limitations and patterns. You know, a while ago, a couple weeks ago, I talked about realizing that I still had some echoes of issues around abandonment, and it surprised me. But you know, like being willing to find these echoes of things that still shape our experience, right? So I've been, over the weekend especially, did a lot of intense work, and then I noticed that there was a lot of muck coming up, just like a dense kind of heavy emotion. And you know, what I realized, thankfully, I was able to realize quickly that it was just old stuff coming out to be released. You know, it's kind of like when we get sick, there's a retracement as we're healing, that we go back through the process where there's the emergence of those symptoms as things are healing. And so what I recognized that this was just really remnants of old stuff. And so essentially I was able to recognize it as breakdown. And as I was able to recognize it as breakdown, I was able to remove myself a little bit from the experience of it to recognize what was going on there. And then I was able to be putting my attention on letting it go. So Rosalind says, when letting go for me, it feels like a death. Old ways of thinking die. And sometimes it feels my purpose in life has no meaning. And so Rosalind, that's beautifully said. And it's a testament to your courage to be facing that death, because it is a death. There's death before rebirth, right? There has to be a letting go, a shedding of old skins. That's what's going on for me in a big way too. And I understand the feeling that it feels sometimes like your purpose is faltering or falling away and has no meaning. I understand that too, because in that death, it's what we're doing is we're relinquishing attachment to all kinds of things, all kinds of behaviors and vantage points and beliefs and ideas. And Rosalind says, practicing standing in my truth is choosing to disarm the tendency to look for meaning. Wow, that's huge. Maybe that part is just retraining the nervous system of a new normal. That's powerful. So to disarm the tendency to look for meaning. And you know, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, human beings are meaning-making machines. That's what we do. And we make meaning, we make interpretations, we connect with all different kinds of ideas about how things are. When you talk about purpose in life, that's a whole other thing. That's another level of meaning. And I think what you're saying is something that I can resonate with, is that whatever meaning we create, we do create it. That we can choose a purpose and a path and a meaning in our lives and recognize at the same time that we create it. So it's kind of the holding with open hand that I talk about a lot. And that is to allow for that paradox, is that I quoted an old friend about everything is symbolic and nothing is symbolic. Everything has meaning and nothing has meaning. And we do create meaning for ourselves. And there are moments as we're shedding these identities and letting go of the things that we cling to, that sometimes that meaning also gets shifted and changed and challenged. And, I was thinking about this as I was meditating this morning. And I was reminded that my perspective on letting go is that as Westerners, we're not inclined to let go. We are trained throughout our whole lives to acquire, right? And not to let go and not to surrender, right? We're trained to accumulate. And with that dynamic in mind, what I came up with that works for me is, rather than letting go, to expand, to include. So as I can expand to include all aspects of myself, then the recognition is that I am not any one of those aspects. As I expand to include all of it, then I am all of it. I am more than any part of it, which I think gets to the same place, like when we believe or when we connect to being whole and being all encompassing, like everything and nothing, the polarity of that, like somewhere in the middle of everything and nothing is where we truly reside. And I think we can get there by letting go or by expanding to include. And I think you're right on, Rosalind, when you're talking about retraining the nervous system to a new normal. And then that new normal gets to be retrained to another new normal, and on and on and on. And I think ultimately we get to be very fluid in our experience and in our interpretations of our experience. And ultimately, as we can bring ourselves to be more fully present, then the interpretations even fall away, and we become in the flow of life, living itself through us, like life as an intelligence expressing itself through us. And in that, there's this wonderfully magnificent dance that's unified. I mean, if we think about ants, for instance, or bees, they are a hive mind, right? They are working in unity and in a dance with one another. And it doesn't eliminate their individuality, in that each of them have their roles, right? They all have their roles that are distinct. They all take specific action. And so I think that we have the capacity, as we connect with consciousness more directly, we have the capacity to be in a more harmonious dance with one another, with nature, with the innate intelligence of the universe, that as we connect more deeply, we're connecting to that collective, and it doesn't in any way deny our individuality. It instead utilizes and is enriched by our individuality in that collective dance. So it's kind of like the different instruments in an orchestra, right? That each instrument, each musician playing each instrument is doing their thing, and it's creating this magnificent musical experience. So I'm wondering, for you, again, we're talking about it being darkest before the dawn. And I think that we can see that on an individual level. I think we can also see that on a cultural level, where there's so much upheaval, and there has been for years now, where we've gotten to see a lot of darkness in our society, and we're still struggling with that. And I tend to think that the breakdown and breakthrough also shows up in our greater cultures. And I think that we can use these moments when there's the temptation to just give up or to quit. We can use these moments to further inspire ourselves to stand back and look at the dynamic and recognize the opportunity, recognize the call for redoubling our intention and refining our sensibilities and cultivating our clarity. I think that in the world right now, I mean, I know that there are times when I have been tempted to just give up as well, you know, to see all the crazy in the world right now, and to feel overwhelmed by it. And I think it's healthy for us to remember that structures, you know, that as we're going through these radical transformations, there's a lot of upheaval that has to happen. There's a lot of there are a lot of systems that need to crumble in order to make room for the new systems, or to make room for positive change. And we get to be alert and participating members of this human family in order to shepherd it into the next awakening. At least that's what I'm intending, you know, that all of this crazy is part of us waking up and creating more of the world that we are envisioning to live into, rather than the dystopian projections. Perhaps we have the ability to be redoubling our intentionality toward the light, for ourselves, for our communities, for our global family. So I know that there's a lot of despair in these times, and I have felt that too. And I think as if we can recognize that it is darkest before the dawn, that maybe that can give us the courage and the strength to continue and to be looking for the hints of the sun rising over the horizon, you know, that we get to be deliberate in our awareness and allow ourselves to experience breakdown as a part of the process of transformation. And breakdown, it's, oftentimes, especially in a personal way, we take the opportunity of breakdown to criticize ourselves and judge ourselves for failing, when in fact part of it, breakdown is a necessary part of the process of growth and transformation. I don't know if you remember as a kid having had Charlie horses, growing pains. I think that it's when we exercise, we're breaking down muscles so that they can get stronger when they rebuild. So it's a natural process. And it can be a very painful process, particularly when we allow ourselves to fall into the drama of it without the perspective of, oh, it's just breakdown, it's feedback. So I invite you to allow yourselves to recognize the stumbling blocks as just that, stumbling blocks and breakdown, and part of the breakthrough process, part of the process of transformation and growth. And with that, I think I'll call it a morning. And I so deeply, deeply appreciate you joining me for these morning musings and for engaging with us. And Louise says, such a wonderful connection and conversation, very helpful. I'm thrilled, Louise. Thank you. That you tuned in on the right day. So anyway, be gentle with yourselves. Allow yourselves to recognize or stand back and see the bigger picture, and don't fall into the breakdown as a result. Okay, allow it to be part of a process instead. And so I'm Mira Rubin, and this is the Core Connection. And I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, on EWN One with the Earth and Enlightened World Living. And until next time, let's allow ourselves the gift of the bigger picture. And again, so much love and so much appreciation for you and who you are as the light that you are in the world.